Welcome everybody. This is Günther Fedinger speaking here. I launch now my third People's Petition. This is for the Austrians to support the free trade agreement with the United States of America. Of course, Austria is part of the European Union, so this must be the European Union concluding that. But Austria to this day is the most anti-American, most protectionist country, and this is an absolute disaster. And I fight since 25 years the Austrian protectionism, the anti-Americanism. We are still not in NATO, and we are still not supporting the trade agreements, which should be part of the turn to the West, which we absolutely need to do as an answer to the Russian war. In tomorrow's press conference, which will be in German language, so I do now the pre-briefing basically in English, I want to outline this and to present these facts and these issues, Austrian problem with xenophobism, with protectionism, with the whole unfortunate public policy and our the term is called Zeitenwende. I will use now Westwende. We should turn to the West, because we have missed Zeitenwende. Germany has done at least something in terms of energy. And they have, of course, been already in NATO. That's, of course, achieved in Germany. They have also supplied Ukraine quite considerable. Austria has done nothing. So in all these terms, we have really spectacular failed the challenges of our time because of our intransigent anti-Americanism, our hate against the West, our xenophobic issues, and the completely irresponsibility of our political elite, and that's and it's basically in all parties, this anti-Americanism, protectionism. The neos I would like to partially at least excuse, and the worst of all, of course, are the nationalists, and then the other three are more or less quite similar, very disappointing. So I have made this Westwende. I've made 5 categories in this press conference I will do tomorrow, and you will see my presentation. It will be partly in English, partly in German, so you can follow the presentation. But I will do several briefings now in English because I want to draw the international attention to these considerable problems we face in Austria, and that's something I would like to change here. So in the field of defense, we have not joined NATO, while other countries have, Sweden, Finland. We even welcomed the Finnish Prime Minister here recently. And we have completely failed in the area of defense. We have also not supplied any weapons to Ukraine. We have not reformed our military. We have done some spending increase. But if you see the situation of the Austrian military, which is dramatically underinvested, it's minimal what we have achieved. And we have a complete failure in the Westwende, in the Zeitenwende, in the area of defense, security, military. It's utterly disappointing, complete disaster, and I have called already for the resignation of Mrs. Tanner. We are not participating in the military training mission of Ukraine, of the EU for Ukraine. We are not helping on the military side. We are minimally only helping on the financial side for Ukraine. We completely failed the tests, and that's a big shame. Then comes the trade politics, because the logic is also we decouple from Russia, we then open to the West and to the world and to the free world. I made it very clear, we have no free trade agreement with America. The Austrians are not in favor, actually opposing strictly the FTA with Mercosur. We are not supporting the FTA with Indonesia, Philippines and the ASEAN, not with the Gulf Cooperation Council. So we are completely failing on the trade side. We are working for palm oil populism and all this Amazonas green populism, while we are not decoupling from Russia. We work for the clear reason of corruption. Still, we have in December 2022, 7 billion of import from Russia. No, 7, the biggest amount of of gas import ever again. This is now for December. And it's a very big shame. So we are completely failing. So what we need on the trade policy is the decoupling from Russia and the opening of the West. I've made the list of the 10 free trade agreements which we are missing. I repeat, it's USA, Mercosur, Africa, it is the Gulf Cooperation Council, it is Pakistan, it is India, it's ASEAN, the Southeastern Asian Cooperation Council, with the question obviously of Indonesia and the Philippines. They are both already advanced. They want to do that. We have completely failed. We failed the Philippines, and then we promote a global gateway. These are not poor countries. They can build the infrastructure themselves. Of course, we can help them. But they want a free trade agreement, and we don't give it to them because of French populism and Austrian protectionism. And I really so much finished with that. Yeah. And it's such a shame. And we are, Edstadler resign, Nehammer resign, Kogler resign. And unfortunately, we don't have a real alternative because the rest is the worst. So the only justification for this government is that the rest, these Russian-funded populists who are treasonable people, and actually I'm now sued by one publicist of Austria who is paid by Russia, seemingly, as he publishes the Russian opinions in the Austrian Kronenzeitung. Mr. Klaus Woltron, he wants to sue me. I'm looking forward for that one. So nevertheless, we have in trade completely failed. In security, we have completely failed. Then we come to the point of the opening of the labor market and the EU policy, basically. It's EU policy because most of the EU have had a quite considerable positive answer to the European crisis we faced, to the Russian war in 2022-23. Because they have given the candidate status to Ukraine, historic achievement, candidate status to Bosnia, historic achievement, candidate status towards Moldova, historic achievement. So these things have happened and that were really very good, and these are historic things. The EU and the Austrians, until the last moment, in the case of Ukraine and Moldova, we opposed it. Then later we just pushed for Bosnia additionally, as a kind of exchange. That was good. And Bosnia, good, yeah. But we have actually failed completely on the question of Ukraine and Moldova. And now, because even today, most of the politicians say, yeah, that was in the television, the leading politicians, Mr. Shida, for example, a socialist MEP. He says very clearly, yes, that was a bit over the top and we really don't mean it. It was just decided. What the policy is that if you then distance yourself from Ukraine as EU member again, absolute failure. And the thing which the member states can do, because it's not unified policy, is how you treat the labor market. The opening of the labor market can be done individually. That's why I choose this as the parameter how we really treat the Eastern Europeans in Austria, of the new member countries. The Germans have opened the labor market much more than we in Austria. And still today the labor market access for the Ukrainians is only, contrary to what I have spread a little bit of disinformation, I'm apologizing because the ORF has wrongly reported it 1 month ago. We have only done it until 2024 March. So we continuously give insecurity and short-termism for the Ukrainians who are in the war. And at the same time, all the other Western Balkan people and the Moldovans and Georgians have no labor market access to Austria. Whenever we have a bit decreased the level of conditions for the so-called Austria card, we have done a little bit of progress, but the underlying xenophobic hatred against the Eastern Europeans is still the same. It's still the same. Very unfortunate. So we also failed completely on the EU side, on the labor market side, on this EU integration system. Only in the last moments we have agreed on to the Brussels decisions. We have not been able to get EU candidate status for Georgia and for Ukraine, by the way. Would be also in the Austrian interest, obviously, but we have failed. And we have done on the criteria which we can do as Austria, the labor market, we have done almost close to nothing. Very disappointing from the one person in the government which I thought is still the most reasonable person, Mr. Martin Kocher. I'm also finished with him. So comes the next one, energy. Energy is absolute disaster. Our policy is since 50 years a disaster. I criticize it a whole lifelong. I'm now 54. I criticize the Austrian dependency on Russia and our complicity with the Russian for the Soviet Union. We have basically helped the Soviet Union to prolong its terrible existence by funding their energy via Austria, because the hubs were coming in 68 when I was born towards Austria, and since then the Russians have sold their energy towards Western Europe via Austria. Some Austrian traders got rich, and most Europeans got more dependent from Russia. And it isn't. Could have developed our energy system at least a little bit in balance, yeah. But no, it was cheaper, it was more corrupt, and it was pleasing the Russians and the Soviets before. We continue to do it to this day. Reason being, I explained, in 2018 there was a contract for, I think it is until 2040 concluded, and the Austrian government doesn't want to break it, because despite the war and all the other effort, they are not ready to break with Russia, because that would be illegal proceedings and then would be complicated. And also the ones who got commissioning for this treaty, they would be questions. Why Schüssel got so much money for this contract, yeah? And would he have to pay it back, yeah? And all this Austrian economic elite, which is behind this contract, yeah, they would be, of course, very much having to answer questions to Gazprom and Russia why they cannot keep this contract valid. So basically, Mr. Nehammer has the order to keep that 40-year contract, this fixed price contract, in power. And that's why we have in 2022, despite the war, the moment the delivery technicalities have been solved, there is again maximum input from Russia in our gas system. And of course, a flow to Russia from our financial system, and can continue the funding. That's the unfortunate reality of our gas dependency on Russia, based on corruption, collusion, and compromise, because obviously all these past payments are documented on the Russian side. They can also disclose it and destroy the reputation of Mr. Schüssel, Mr. Nehammer, and all the ones involved, yeah, in this deal. And it would definitely bring this government down if this complexity and this reality of complicity with the Russian energy system would be fully disclosed. And it will. It will be disclosed. I'm confident. I will work on it. And we need also to change our energy system away from Russia, boycott and embargo Russia completely, withdraw our companies from Russia, because it's outrageous. Austrian Raiffeisen Bank and OMV and so many companies still active. And it's a big pain, because it's also very wrong policy, because the smart policy after the beginning of the full-scale war in 2002 to withdraw fully from Russia, I have advocated that. Because why? Due to the financial sanctions from America and the EU, the withdrawal of dividends of these investments is anyhow no longer possible. So they accumulate money there, but ultimately it will be all lost, because there will be no peaceful agreement with Russia and the end of hostilities. This will be all part of a very acrimonious kind of long-term disaster. If Russia will fall, anyhow, that will be a complete disaster. And in between, it will be not really productive. They had to write it off already, these investments. And it's much better to completely get out of it, because the reputation damage for the Austrian companies is huge. Ukraine has already sanctioned the board of the Raiffeisen Bank, for example. And we are basically, our whole relation with America, with Ukraine, is in the shadow of all this massive Austrian investment in Russia, which all will go sour anyhow, and you can write it off completely. And then we stay engaged to please Putin while we are losing all this money anyhow. It would have been much better to build a compensation system for the private sector, where the public is then paying basically compensation, but nationalizes all these losses and basically writes it off and manages as an Austrian public loss. And then nobody hopefully will ever say it was such a great investment in Russia, because that will be anyhow the reality. And some compensation scheme will be probably the reality. And so much of this investment anyhow are insured by the export insurance system. So it is at the end of the day anyhow a big public loss. The whole Russian adventure of Schüssel will cost us hundreds of billions of euro, and she should be sued for all this, not me by Mr. Boltron, but Schüssel for all the losses he has occurred for the Austrian business community in Russia. When this will be kind of summed up, it will be a complete disaster, and it is his fault. Good, that's energy. And then on the fifth, because I have 5 parameters, it's security, it's the trade, it's the EU and the labor market, and the energy sector, and the 5th one is our Russian policy. Because the policy towards Russia, whenever Schallenberg is always then sending some diplomats out from Russia, minimal compliance with the sanctions. He is always in these meetings on the soft side. He's always with Russia. He's always trying to protect the Austrian-Russian relation. And that's exactly what he's doing also now when it comes to this delegation for the OECD meeting, which is coming actually this Thursday, tomorrow, to Vienna to participates in the OSZE, in this Organization for Security and Cooperation, which is based in Vienna. He says legally he can do nothing about it, but that's a big BS, because obviously he could do it. What could the Russians do if he doesn't give? Then the Russians could sue Austria and Schallenberg is then responsible. If he doesn't give visas, what kind of recourse legally they could do? Yeah? Obviously they could disclose the compromise they have over Schüssel and Schallenberg, yeah? And Van der Bellen. They could disclose that, and that's why he doesn't do it. Yeah? Because the legal recourse for this entry right towards the hosting nation of an international organization, what exactly the Russians could do, we are basically at war with them already. So what is exactly? They should send the tanks or missiles to Austria. The German patriots are at the Polish-Ukrainian border. At least for that, they would be quite useful to protect us from the Russian missile attacks until Austria. They will certainly not come. Nor the Iranians on their level of technology. They can just do a lot of harm because we are not protecting Ukraine enough. So send these Russian diplomats packing. They are actually then planning to go to Austrian nationalist ball of the Friends of Putin, and it will be a major scandal, a complete embarrassment for the Austrian public. And all of them, Edstadler and Schallenberg and all this foreign policy elite of Austria, who are defending such an indefensible position just to protect Mr. Schüssel not to be in the compromise of Russia, is absolutely disgusting for me, and I'm very disappointed. Yes, these are the 5 dimensions of what I call Westwende. What we really should do, just to be very clear, is turn to the West. Yeah? Here means NATO membership, conclusion of the trade agreements with America, Mercosur, Africa, and the Gulf Cooperation Council, Australia, India, Pakistan, opening Europe to the West. This is very important, and of course the enlargement of WTO and the OECD that I have mentioned already. Then we have the opening of the labor market, very clearly, continuously opening permanently for all EU candidate countries and Kosovo and Georgia. They should be candidate countries this year. And obviously, the energy sector completely decoupling from Russia. Boycott, embargo Russia completely, and they are a warmongering nation. They have started this war. They must be completely, all contracts must be broken, no trade with the enemy, absolutely no, no, no. This is the better policy. And so we should do that, and also not work politically. I'm absolutely supporting Russia to be named a terrorist state, first of all. Secondly, we should, maybe if we don't break the relations with Russia, then we should at least have the Russian staff in the Austrian missions to be reduced on the bare minimum. Everybody else go. Go, go, go. And obviously on the ambassador level, it's also not necessary. I mean, the Russians have killed their opposition on our streets. And let's not forget that. This is the reality. They have killed the Chechenian opposition activists in our streets. And nobody cared in Austria, at least not Schallenberg. Yeah? And that's exactly embarrassing. So we should really not allow this delegation from Russia, from this terrorist state, to join this OECD meeting. Actually, we have excluded them from the Council of Europe. What's the logic to have them sitting then in the OECD? Get them off, get them out. Yeah? Because we can have the successor nations of Russia then in the OECD. Once Russia breaks, and it will break, and it will be a disaster. I have raised this American, so it will be a much better world if there's new states in Russia. That's what I wanted to say. Good. I have this, changing the topic a bit, I have this American flag here because I really like what Mr. Biden did in Ukraine and in Poland. It's amazing, and I completely endorse his successful agenda. It was a historic visit. The German Chancellor and the French President didn't go to Kiev, and it was entirely possible to do it the great shame that they didn't do it, and bravo America, really he is more European than most of our leaders, and I really thank America for defending free Europe, and we should have conclude a free trade agreement. And I would like to end as well with underlying a little bit, that we will do tomorrow as well, with the reasons why we have all this problematic policy in Austria. There is a big reason for that. Where's the reason? We have not really integrated in the West after this neutrality treaty, because the Russians mentality-wise, politically, they never left. Because, of course, the Russian troops withdrew to Slovakia, Czechoslovakia in 55, but there is a lot of Russian influence still, especially in Vienna, because they were still so close, and they had this state treaty as the neutrality as a kind of cover. And the Austrians were, of course, very concerned, rightfully so, and then developed this kind of, mixed economy, mixed society, this kind of neutrality-based narrative of the Austrian identity, and to this day we have a problem. Secondly, Austria was really re-educated and away from Nazism. We still have so much anti-Semitism. We still have so much anti-Americanism. And where does it come from? It comes from Hitler directly. Hitler was the greatest anti-American. He even declared America the war in December 41, when after the Japanese attacked, because he wanted America as the enemy, because for him America was everything which was capitalist and Jewish. That was basically the power of capitalism and a Jewish world conspiracy, according to Hitler. And this thinking has still survived in Austria. To this day, we have a real problem with anti-capitalist we are all in a way living in the free capitalist world, in the market economy. You cannot name it differently, but when you say in Austria we are in a capitalist world, then they think, we are exploited by some few Americans, and that's exactly the thinking which lends to this, and this comes directly from Stalin on the one side and Hitler on the other side. This extremist narrative agenda has survived in Austria into the cover of neutrality. That's why we have to end neutrality. That's why we have to join the Western world fully. That's why we have to break with Russia completely. And if we have not understood that America is the protector of freedom in Europe in 2023, I don't know when, because it's obviously, but people like Klaus Woltron, who spread the poisonous kind of anti-American, anti-Semite, protectionist kind of, under this slogan of anti-imperialism on the left. And then they have these Christian covers, they have various cover stories, neutrality, peace. In reality, they are all anti-Semites, they are all protectionist. Xenophobia is very ripe here against Eastern Europeans. Then they covered the rich Ukrainians with their SUV. In reality, they are against Ukrainians here, competing on the labor market. That's the reality. It's very tragic. For me, this hate, this hate of freedom, this hate of the West, this is so strong in Austria, and it's unfortunately very predominant. And then you see the high opinion polls, why they don't like to join NATO, and the Austrians don't like America, and all these things, they're all connected to never anywhere this missing West integration, this understanding that this anti-Semitist and anti-capitalist Hitlerian or Stalinized views have still merged in Austria and survived to this moment. And this is the reality of Austria. And we have to fight it in the fundaments. We have to outroot this anti-Semitism and this anti-capitalism, this protectionist xenophobia and this anti-Americanism. And I will devote my time to exactly do that. And I will ask you for your support. Please subscribe this channel. I will now release several videos on exactly that topic in the coming days. And tomorrow I will do this press conference in German language. And please support this channel, and please fight anti-Semitism, fight the protectionism of Austria, the anti-Americanism and the anti-Ukrainianism, which we also face, and please fight Austrian neutrality, where all these terrible, toxic, poisonous forces have found their cover shield in this peace and neutrality narrative, this equal distance towards Russia and America, and this kind of cover they found, and then they can spread their hate against other people, their kind of protectionist, xenophobic, anti-capitalist, anti-Semitic kind of worldview. They can, in Austria, as a kind of Alpenfestung of all the worst ideological leftovers of the 20th century. This is very disgusting, and I call for European Austria, pro-Kosovo, pro-Ukraine, pro-American, open to the world, united as an answer to the war, where Ukraine and Kosovo have as a place on the same table, where the labor market is open for all Europeans, where we are united with America in NATO against the Russian aggression and potentially the Chinese aggression, and of course, where we are prosperous, free, and successful, and we can protect our friends, we can defeat our enemies, and we can live in freedom under the American nuclear umbrella, and we can live prosperous because we are open to the world and we can be united in one common market of the free world. And that is much better than to be dependent on a Kremlin dictator who is ready to crash everybody and who he doesn't like militarily in his neighborhood, or kill his enemies from Litvinenko, Gingic, or Chernobyl, or Nemtsov physically when he doesn't like them. And this kind of people, Mr. Schüssel, Mr. Voltron, and they are supporting, and that's very disgusting. And I completely distance myself from those who endorse contract killers in the disguise of presidents, like we have it in the Russian president, and who is still supporting Putin in 2023, is a traitor and is a very toxic person, and please don't support him. And tomorrow, actually, I will do this press conference, and then I will also be on the protests to support 1 year for the sad anniversary of 1 year of war. And then I will keep you posted on this channel for my future activities. And please support America, support Ukraine, support Kosovo, support, obviously, freedom, and support European unity as the answer to the war, and fight all forms of anti-Semitic, anti-capitalist, anti-European, anti-American, protectionist xenophobia, which unfortunately is part of the neutrality narrative, and it's hidden under this neutrality, and fight neutrality wherever you meet it. Thanks a lot. Austria, join NATO and be part of the free world. Let's complete Westwende and West integration and fully join the West. Thanks a lot. All the best. Keep you posted. Bye.